You are listening to Smart Women's Dating Podcast, episode number 78. Welcome to Smart Women's Dating Podcast. I am your host, certified life coach Lærke Nielsen, and I help smart, independent women attract the love they deeply desire without having to chase or settle. This podcast will give you the mindset tools and insights you need to finally crack the code to your love life. Are you ready? Then let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. This week we're going to talk about something that I know a lot of you are familiar with, some of you more and some of you maybe less. The anxiety that you can feel when you are exchanging with a man in text. You have connected with him, let's say you meet him in an app and you haven't met him yet, or you've met him only a few times. Or maybe you had some phone calls or video calls, but it's still very early phases and you still don't know him, so you don't feel certain about where things are going. But you are excited about the connection and you think he could be very interesting and you hope he thinks the same about you. And so you send him a text and now you are waiting for him to respond. And then when he responds, you get a kick of dopamine and you feel relieved. He is still interested and he still wants to get to know you more. And then you respond to his text and you go back to waiting again. And everything else in your life seems less relevant than this conversation you are having with someone who is practically a stranger. There is so much to be said about this situation, and I will consider doing a whole episode only about this because this is a thing that for many of us can feel like an emotional roller coaster. It plays with your nervous system, and if you are not aware of what's going on and learn how to manage your thoughts about it, then the stories that run in the background in your subconscious mind are about something much, much deeper than a text. It's about your worthiness, your value as a human being, as a partner, and your lovability. On the other hand, if you learn to recognize that and remind yourself that your value can never ever be diminished by a man, let alone a man who's basically a stranger, and your worthiness cannot be reduced by someone outside yourself. If you learn to recognize that and manage your mind around it, it will be a whole different situation for you. And then the other element in this picture is the obsession with a man that you hardly know. When we do that, it is not about the man, it's about you. So I have throughout the month of April offered free coaching calls to anyone who would be willing to allow me to use the recording here on the podcast. And this episode is part of a call I had with a woman who is struggling with pacing the texting and the phone calls and the length of dates. In other words, it gets too intense too fast for her. Now, it's obvious that in a short amount of time, we can only scratch the surface. And when I invite for these calls, I don't know anything about the person and their background. So if I was to continue working with this person, we would go much deeper and look at her thoughts driving this desire for intensity and find more strategies to recenter her attention back to herself, practice self-validation, and redirect her mind to other things. But I still think that in a 30 minutes call, there can be some valuable information that are worth sharing. And that's why I have invited for this kind of coaching calls to begin with. And I know that some of you are going to recognize part of this, and I hope you will find it useful. So here you are. All right, so thank you for calling. And if you can please share with me what you're struggling with, how you need my support.
I am struggling in the way that I have a long background as a single. I would really like to meet a man. And I found your podcast when I was searching for some information on some podcasts, and I really, really liked it. So I have been listening a lot, and I thought then it could be very good with a coaching session, because I see that and understood that I'm doing a lot of the common mistakes that it sounds like a lot of women are doing out there.
And what are these, for instance, some of these that you have identified?
What I listened to recently was, for example, getting attached very early, meeting very often, having a lot of telephone contact already in the first week, not keeping the mysterious part of getting to know each other, just telling about everything from the start, which of course make no sense when I understood and listening to your podcast.
And so you get very emotionally invested early on when you meet someone that you find interesting. And then what happens?
What happened is then that I want to spend more time with that person. I'm a very intense person. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I have ADHD. So for me, it's very intense. If I do not have this intense contact and I see continuously progress in both feelings and get to know each other, I simply get bored. And here I see that I need to find a middle way where I don't get bored. I get the input that I need to stay interested, but also not just putting it up and being very open from the beginning. Also get the man or the guy a chance to show more of himself and not only talking, faking the future, giving impression that I will be disappointed. I often do very bad choices of men. That's also something, a history I have. I simply are looking for men that do not fulfill what I actually want to have in life.
Have you tried sometimes dating several men in parallel, or do you always focus on only one?
In the past, when I was younger, I did dating in parallel, but now when I got older, I think it's more honest and more a good way of acting to date and have contact with one man at the time. That's what I think is best. But I also learned that it could be maybe better to maybe have one or two or maybe three that you are parallel having contact with. I don't know.
Yeah, so a lot of women feel like you just expressed they're kind of doing something behind the back of someone and it's more honest to only date one. But as long as we decide that we're just getting to know someone, we're just going for a coffee, we're going for a walk, we're going to the cinema, there's no intimacy and there's no exclusivity, then it's actually okay to see other men. I mean, you're allowed to have a coffee with another man. And it can help you not get overly invested early on, and it can help you pace the dating so you don't feel bored, even if there might be 10 days between a date, because then you have other guys you also see in between. And then once you find out one of them is actually really interested in being exclusive with you, developing the connection further and having more frequent dates, then you decide you will stick with this one person.
Yes, but here I have a challenge that I think I need to learn to handle. I'm traveling a lot. I am most often traveling 3 or 4 days per week. So it means that I have very little time home where I live, in the city where I live. So it is very often FaceTime, telephone calls that becomes also too intense. And it comes completely from my side, but it's also, if you want to, the other one want to, and then suddenly you're talking 3-4 hours every evening. And the next step is to then meet or to meet again, but it could be 2 weeks in the future. And here I also do not really know how to handle this, how the best situation is.
To handle the time where you're waiting for the date or the long conversations?
Both, I can say, because I have experienced now several times that this FaceTime call becomes very intense and very long. I do not ensure that I go to sleep when I need to sleep, so I get more and more tired because I want to, but I also do not listen to my needs. And here I think it's a very important thing for me to understand: how can I continue listening to my needs, my basic needs, and still be dating or getting to know someone but not so intense.
Yeah. Here, what I would suggest as something that could help you is to decide ahead of time. How long do I want this conversation to be? Set a time boundary. If it's a FaceTime call with someone that you haven't met in person yet, it could be something like half an hour. And it doesn't mean you can't have another FaceTime call later, another day in the week before you meet him in person. But just set a time limit to begin with. Decide before you even call him, this is what I'm going to spend. It's also going to send a signal to him that you are not someone who just can pull out 4 hours of your calendar agenda and give it to someone you haven't even met yet. You signal to him that you are a woman who value your time. Decide ahead of time how much time you want the call to be, how long you want it to be. And then in the beginning of the conversation, you tell him that you have to stop in half an hour. You don't need any explanation or excuse. You can think of something if you feel uncomfortable just saying that. You can just say, I'm waiting for a call from a friend, or I have something else I need to go and do. So we have to stop in half an hour. How does that work for you? Maybe he will actually think that that is great, because especially in the first call, right, when you haven't met each other yet, it can feel awkward. And for him, it can also be nice to know, okay, this is half an hour, and then we'll see what happens.
I fully agree. I will be able to decide for myself. I will be able to tell him also that there's a deadline. I only have half an hour or 1 hour. Even when you meet someone on the first date, I have also several times, you maybe need for a walk or a coffee Saturday in the morning, and then suddenly you spend the whole weekend together. That have happened several times for me. Okay. I think here the same principle will go, that I decide with myself before, this is one coffee, one walk, 1.5 hours, 1 hour. After that, I need to leave. Even that I don't have other appointment or something that I really need to do in a certain time, I can just make it up. I think that's really makes sense.
So that is the thing that you can try, definitely. And then the other question was, what about in between the call, and then if you only can see him 2 weeks later? Your question was, how do I manage my time in between? How do I not reach out? Or what exactly do you find challenging in between the FaceTime call and the date 2 weeks later?
Actually, when I start to connect with someone, and I'm really not so often I meet someone or I see someone that I'm interested and that I see, okay, this is actually a man I would like to really get to know. When it happens, I get so excited somehow, and I just want to spend all time with him. I want to text him all the time. It gets again too intense, almost like I'm very needy of getting the attention back and see, okay, is he still there? Do he still like me? So I guess also this is a fear of missing out maybe, and also get his attention back, to be honest.
Yeah. Is it usually you who initiate the texting, or is it 50-50, or what does it look like?
I would say more me than him. I am waking up very early in the morning, 5 o'clock, and I have a very bad habit to then send a text if I am in a dialogue with someone. What I started after listening to your podcast is that I never sent any text to anyone, not even my children, before 8 o'clock and after 9:30. So this is like a boundary I set up, and I have been able to keep it for the last 2 weeks, and that's a huge progress for me.
Yeah.
But yes, I am the one initiating the texting. I have also the last few weeks only he texts one time, I do one time. Then I don't text again. So it's 1-to-1 all the time.
Okay, that's good. If there's always an exchange of you're waiting for him to come back before you text again, do you still think you're texting too much then?
No, but the feeling I have while I'm waiting for the text, I get a very bad feeling in my stomach. I start doubting, okay, he don't like me, he don't want to meet again. So that comes, and I saw now, since my history is with a lot of texting, FaceTime, and then meeting due to my way of living. And I see after the first date, where if I want to continue, I'm already connected much too much for where we are in the relation or the getting to know each other period.
Yes. And there are several different things you can try out here. You can try to say, what is it really that I'm so scared of? And what if that actually happens? Then what would happen in my life? Because it sounds like you're really good at then moving on and connecting with a new person. And also when you're waiting for the text where you just want to know for sure, you want to have a validation that he's still interested. And that is a sort of implying that if you don't hear from him in a text, that it means he's no longer interested. And this you can, of course, challenge. Does it really mean that?
Absolutely not.
What could be some other reasons he's not texting?
No, but I mean, we are working, we're driving, we're eating, we have children to take care of. I mean, there's a whole, but it is like I have a eager or a need of, and I'm very much aware there's a lot of more to work with behind that, to be somehow very much appreciated. And I need, in a maybe unhealthy way, him to show me that he's so interested. And here I also need to challenge my way of thinking.
Yeah, because some of this validation is something you can give yourself. And you can also practice thinking, I don't actually need a text from him in order to believe that he's still interested. You know, it's like an evidence of his interest that it can only come in the text. If you know that he's busy with a lot of different things, there are many good reasons why he's not texting you right now. And you then ask yourself, what would I make it mean if he did text me? What is it that I really want? Well, then I would make it mean that he's still interested. Well, we don't want to need a man to validate ourselves all the time, because it's something that we need to learn to do for ourselves, so we don't depend on someone else to have a good feeling of ourselves. So you want to practice, instead of needing him to show you that he's interested, then be interested in yourself. Remind yourself that you are interesting. And why is it that you're interesting? What are the things that you have to offer in a relationship and that you value? And again, if he's not coming towards you, he's not the right one for you.
I never thought about it that way. And it, of course, sounds very logic, because I'm absolutely sure that I also have a lot to contribute with in a man's life. It's just, or not just, but when you have so many bad experience in so many years, it's hard to start swifting the mindset or the way of thinking.
We cannot go into all your past, but it is also a question of how you think about your past when you say has so many bad experiences. Maybe you had these experiences to learn something, and maybe there are some learnings to be taken from that. So instead of thinking all these bad experiences, you were on a path where you learned something. So it doesn't have to mean you have to repeat your past, but you can create something different in the future.
Yeah, that's right. Do you think it's an option to set up a rule for myself saying, okay, I do not respond before tomorrow morning, I do not respond before in 3 hours or 1 hour? Or will that be too much to do? Or what could you recommend?
I don't think you need to wait 3 hours or until next morning, but you just read his message, and then you also don't need to answer straight away. You can think about what is it I want to respond here, and then just send him the message.
Yeah, and here I have a challenge, because I respond when I see it. That is something I also think, we have our phone in front of us almost all waking hours. And of course it is not so attractive if you have a person just responding all the time. I could also see a benefit of actually letting him wait a little bit for my respond.
Here's what I also could see a benefit of, because it sounds like the texting can be something that triggers you a little bit. You could maybe challenge yourself to switch off the phone and put it away for a couple of hours.
Ooh, that would be a challenge, yeah. Yeah.
So it's not like you were deciding, now he sent me a message, I'm going to wait 3 hours before I respond. You just put it away and then you focus on what else is going on in your life.
Yeah. And here I think you have a very valid point, because when I meet a man, when I'm really interesting, and it's like I put the rest of my, of course, we do our working and training and whatever we really need to, but it is very much as I put everything else away and prioritize this much too much.
Yeah. So there you want to try to do that, put the phone away, and also try to say, okay, I'm going to go out with a friend tonight and I'll leave the phone in my bag the whole evening. I won't look at it before I'm back home. And I'm just going to be present with this friend. And then you
But I
can
think
take...
that's not so hard.
Okay.
The hard thing is to then maybe not answering exactly when you are going home and say, okay, now the dinner is finished, I'm on my way home. How are you doing? How was your evening, for example? I'm much too open, I think. I do not need to really tell everything what is going on in the beginning. Then maybe when you get to know each other and you start being exclusive and really have a relationship, maybe, of course, that is changing. But I have some kind of need also to share too much, oversharing.
Well, I think there's part of it that's just your nature. You like to share, you like to communicate, and you don't want to make that wrong. But you want to make sure that if you feel triggered, if you feel you go into this urgent energy or stress or anxiety, that's where you want to look at it. I hope this helps you.
Absolutely. I really like when there are direct and clear ideas how to think and how to do different, because it's really easy to adapt then. So thank you for that. It was really meaningful also to get exactly how to do and then try it out. And then I will find my own way of improving and doing different in the future.
Yeah. So I also want to challenge you to be aware when you say something or you think something about how you did things wrong and it was not the right way and you did all the mistakes and so on. Try to shift it around and see it as a way to get some more information, get curious about your own reaction patterns and see how can I then change this by giving myself some of that reassurance and giving myself some of that validation that I'm looking for from him.
You are completely on spot. Okay. And also be confident in that it's never wrong to be interested.
No, that is definitely never wrong. Now, you said you don't meet that many, but at least you meet someone that you find interesting.
Absolutely. Good. Yes, that I do. Not once a week, but now and then. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. So I want to wish you the best of luck in your future dating.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I hope you found it useful today. As usual, you can book a free consult call with me to hear how I can support you on your dating journey or inside your relationship. Go to the link in the show notes or on my Instagram bio at Lærke the Love Coach. Have a wonderful week and enjoy dating. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast and you want to get support from a coach on your love journey, I invite you to book a free consult call with me. You will find the link in the show notes. And also, don't forget to subscribe, and I would love it if you would rate and review this podcast, and then you'll also help other women find it.